Well, the court's decision may at least temporarily resolve that ban's legal status, but of course the fierce public debate over it continues, including right here, right now. Joining us from New York is geopolitical strategist Charles Ortel. But first, let's go to Cleveland and speak with David Leopold, who holds the chair in immigration law at Ulmer and Byrne. And let me start with you, David. The court ruling that candidate Trump's statements are not applicable when he's president, and that he, as president, has the authority for security, national security reasons to issue that ban. What's wrong with that decision?
Well, there's a lot wrong with that decision. I mean, look, the court traditionally has deferred to the executive in conducting foreign policy, so we know that. But here we have a different situation. We have an executive who ran as a candidate decrying Muslims, saying that he was going to ban Muslims, total and complete ban on Muslims, and so forth. When the first ban came out, the one in January of 2017, that was immediately pushed back by the courts, and the administration had to change it. He decried. He said, "Well, you know, we want to have a complete ban. We should have just done it the way we did it." This is a man who wants to ban Muslims. They've used national security as the pretext, and unfortunately, what the court did was just look at the four corners of the document and refuse to take into account the clear anti-Muslim animus that this president, Donald Trump, has expressed not only as a candidate, but as president of the United States. This is the same man that locks up little children and takes them away from their mothers. And I'm really disappointed. This is a dark day in American jurisprudence history and in American history. The court turned its back on our core principles, freedom of religion.
Charles, your take?
Well, I couldn't disagree more, and I have the utmost respect for this gentleman who is a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I think the court here, in a 5-4 decision, dealt with a piece of paper that on its face does not exclude, for example, large countries that have gigantic amounts of Muslims. It includes 2 countries that do not have Muslims in it. So to say that this is a Muslim ban, I think, is wrong. It's really about restricting immigration from countries that have poor vetting procedures to let dangerous people, potentially dangerous people, into this country at a time when we face mounting dangers around the world.
Charles, I want to ask you a little bit more, though, about the justification, because a lot of people are still wondering, and have been throughout all the different iterations of this ban, why are those Muslim-majority nations, why are the nations that are on that ban actually not the nations who have been directly tied in any way to attacks on U.S. soil? And the countries that have been tied to attacks on U.S. soil are left out.
Well, I think they've done, according to the analysis, they've done a complex analysis of countries around the world to figure out those countries that do have solid vetting procedures and those that don't. And the ones that are on the list are the ones that, at this moment, don't.
Okay. David, I want you to respond to one of Charles's points, because I think one of the judges actually cited it, saying that if you add up the Muslim populations of the 5 countries cited, there was something like 8% of the Muslim population. So how can one argue that it's a Muslim ban?
Well, it's easy, because, so for example, if I have a store here in Ohio in the United States and I refuse to serve African Americans, there are many, many African Americans who I'm not refusing to serve, but I'm still discriminating against African Americans. So the numbers are not important here. What's important is that, number one, the president expressed over and over and over again an anti-Muslim animus, number one. Number two, with respect to what my colleague, and I have mutual respect for him, what he said, what Charles said, with respect to the vetting, that's not a transparent process. We don't know what kind of vetting went on. We don't know what that process is, and that's part of the problem. So the president just gets to say, well, you know what, I decree that people from this country are dangerous or dangerous to the detrimental, excuse me, to the well-being of the United States. And the court just deferred to him. And I think here, rather than just look at the 4 corners of the document, the Supreme Court of the United States, Justice Roberts in particular, as the Chief Justice, had a duty to the nation to go beyond those 4 corners of that document and look at the full context. Look at what this president said. Look at what he means to do. Look, President Trump is an autocrat wannabe, and you've got to believe what the autocrat says, because they intend.
I want to stop you there, David, to let Charles respond in the minute we have before the break. Is there a transparency problem here?
Well, I read the 92-page opinion. I think there's a lot of work went into this. I'll grant you that the early days of the Trump administration, the early proclamations were inartfully drafted. This seems to be tightened up, and the Supreme Court has reviewed it now and has rendered its decision. So I think it's time to move to the next case.
It relates to the decision that was made today. President Trump at a rally in South Carolina yesterday saying he doesn't want to see judges involved in the immigration issues. He just wants a bigger wall, and he wants more enforcement agencies. The fact is, well, certainly I imagine all Americans want secure borders. Shouldn't there be some kind of rule of law, some kind of legal process and procedure involved in immigration issues?
I think he prefaced those remarks by saying that our immigration laws as written today and the regulations associated with them are so complex and so contradictory and seem at variance with many of the immigration laws around the world. We have these loopholes where if you manage to set foot in this country, you can escape inside the country, never to reappear before a judge and be processed. And I think what he was alluding there to was that fact, that loophole. But I grant you that on the surface, taken out of context, not considering the preceding words, it certainly sounded a bit autocratic.
David, though, Trump also alongside that has sort of slammed and mocked the call that we've heard for more judges, in some cases for thousands more, to handle those immigration cases that are sort of yet to be on the books now. In your experience, is that something that is necessary, or does Trump have a point?
Well, Trump always mocks judges. I think probably today is the only exception because the court went his way. But he is a man who does not respect the judiciary. He's mocked judges ever since he came into office, like he mocks the media. You know, and this statement that he made about people coming into the country, the president, and stepping foot in the country, and then they get to come in. Honestly, that is a bull-faced lie. It's a lie. He's spreading a misconception. I've taught immigration law at the university level. I've practiced immigration law. Show me the provision which allows somebody to come into the United States, just set foot in, and go about their merry way. It doesn't exist. Section 235B1 of the immigration law provides that if people come to this country without a visa, they could be turned around right at the border and sent back. That's called expedited removal. All right? And the exception, of course, is asylum. People have to show that they have a credible fear of persecution. So they have to show that there really is something there. At that point, they get a right to a hearing. So the president has a very unique way of misstating the facts, creating falsehoods and false impressions. And we should not just believe what he says. We should check the facts to make sure that he's not spreading lies and falsehoods. And in this case, yes, we do need judges, because judges, if America stands for nothing else, it stands for due process, for the rule of law, and for fairness. And that's what judges hopefully bring to the table.
All right. Charles, I want to ask you to respond to that, and also the specific element of the media, of politics. Do you think that American immigration policy, as we speak, is being determined, that people's feelings about it are being determined solely for political purposes, as David sort of suggests, and not based on an actual coherent policy?
Well, I think that the immigration issue is a hot-button issue. I don't know precisely how many people are inside this country who are not of legal status as immigrants. You hear stories about the issue. People come claiming asylum and then they disappear and don't show up for their court hearing. I think it is fair to ask exactly what are those facts, ask the government to produce those facts. Let's debate those facts. There's a much bigger issue here, though, that I think will unite people across the political spectrum, and that is, frankly, not the threats posed by immigrants, but the threats posed by robots and advancing technology against all workers. If you think the immigration fight is bad, wait till we get on that one.